Hey everybody, it's Gene Marks, and I'm talking today with Sarah Kim, who is the VP of Commercial Marketing at Cox Communications. First of all, Sarah, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm really glad that you have the time.
Yes, thanks for having me.
We're going to be using this conversation, Sarah, for a chapter I'm writing in our book that we're doing together about AI in business and how businesses are using AI. And I wanted to you've got some insights on this, which we're going to get to in a minute. First of all, just for our audience, for me, because I'm going to be using this to write my piece. Tell me first of all a little bit like what is your job as VP of Commercial Marketing?
Yeah, so certainly. So as VP of Commercial Marketing, I lead the B2B marketing organization and all the functions involved as well too. So essentially a CMO of our B2B business.
Got it. All right, that's great. How long have you been with Cox?
So I've been Cox not quite a year. And
Okay.
actually my background is in technology. So before Cox, I was 23 years in different technology companies, such as IBM, Microsoft, and the longest tenure was with SAP.
That is great. It's funny that, people that are in the marketing world, it's amazing where they come from and where they end up. People with, it's not like you necessarily need like a degree in marketing to be a CMO of a company nowadays. Tech people are in such demand for that job. I have a client. I mean, I can tell you the Hartford, big insurance company, and their CMO who just retired. She was a CPA. Like because it's so data driven, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
certainly.
yeah, I don't know. It just it really does depend. But okay, so let's talk a little bit about the surveys that were released during this past year. The one that interests me the most is just in what I want to write about is about AI in the workplace, particularly when it comes to generations.
Yes.
So Cox had a survey come out about this, looking at millennials and Gen Zs. I'm a little disappointed that you ignored us Gen Xers here and boomers, but we can get to us later. First of all, let me ask you if you can just sort of give me some of the takeaways from the survey, and then I'm going to come at you and ask for your takeaways because I'm curious to hear how you interpret them. So
Yeah,
talk to me
no.
a bit about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things that we actually got in black and white, or we suspected going into the survey, was actually interesting to see the results come to light, is that, younger workers are using AI heavily, but they're just not talking about it at work. They're not admitting that they're using it. And that's a very, very interesting concept that I would love to get into with that because, AI is such an interesting area. And
Sure.
being from technology, I think it's one of the most transformative, piece of technology that we've seen in our time and probably will see. So that's the first thing. The second is, and also no surprise, but again, seeing it in black and white was, very, very interesting, was that, also these workers are using and bringing their own technology to work as well,
Mm,
too. So, especially with companies that put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we have enterprise platforms that are secure and very purpose built, the fact that people are bringing their own technology poses some risks, when it comes to security. So that's another thing as
yeah.
well. And then I think as well too, and this is not necessarily a generational thing, but the fact that people want to be heard and being part of technology decisions. I think with the younger generations, being tech natives and growing up with technology, is interesting because they feel that they have the right to have a voice in tech decisions and they don't feel like they have a seat at the table. And that was also very interesting as well.
Yeah, those are three really great points. Let's dig into them further. First of all, I think this is like an issue. I mean, this like scares me when you say, first of all, that people are bringing their own technology to work.
Yes.
Scares me a little bit. And then when I hear that they're not even admitting that they're using certain types of AI tools or whatever in the workplace as well is also a little scary. I mean, like, what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm kind of curious, like what you have a team of people, at Cox, and what if you've got like a young, smart employee, but she's bringing her, she likes her own AI app that she's using for research or whatever. Look, like it's not necessarily approved by Cox. I mean, like, for starters, how would you handle that as as an executive?
Yeah. So, it's a very delicate line because myself, I am trying to encourage AI use
Good.
with every single one of my marketing employees, right? So, how do you encourage use and the right use of AI, right? And that's a very delicate line to,
Yeah.
to balance. First off, I think that every employee needs to understand what the risks are in using any tool outside of the enterprise, right? So, for example, I give my team two very simple guardrails when it comes to AI use that are not in an approved AI tool that we have at Cox. Number one is treat customer data as if it were your own data,
Mm.
right? And that's the biggest risk that we run as a telecom industry because we deal with a lot of customer information, and making sure that that does not leak out into the public is priority number one, right? Priority number two, and the second guardrail, and it's very simple, right? Is if you don't want a competitor seeing the information, you shouldn't be putting that into a public LLM tool. And it's as simple as that, right? So number one, making sure that everyone at a high level understands the risks and understands, what are the guardrails that I should be working within at the highest levels. That's the most important thing. But when it comes to, getting people to talk about how they're using AI, so first off, I want to talk about the reason of, why people don't want to admit that they're
Okay.
using AI, because I think this is very fascinating, right? Because I think it comes down to culture, right? And, this is a culture that you and I have grown up in, right? A
Yep.
culture of, we need to be productive.
Yeah.
We need to produce output, right? And that's how we got promoted and how we went up the corporate ladder, had a successful business, right? Is because we produce and we, have a lot of output, right?
Right.
And, with AI, that really equalizes things, right? Because AI is making people more productive than ever. It's, making output much easier, right? And it's really democratizing knowledge that is, been held in high regard and that's, has only been available to the few, right? And so those three things, right, I think are what making people feel, not wanting to talk about how they use it. Because number one, they see it maybe as an advantage that
Yeah.
they don't want to give up. Or number two, they kind of feel like maybe it's cheating and maybe I shouldn't be doing this,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, us as business leaders, as business owners, number one, we have to start shifting and changing what we value out of our workers and out of our employees. It's not about productivity and output. It's how do you actually add value and
Yes.
drive true business outcomes, right? And so AI can certainly be an enabler of that, and we should celebrate that and encourage it. So that's number one. The other fascinating thing about AI is if you give an individual an AI tool, and if you give 10 people the same AI tool, they will all use it in a different way,
Mm.
right, to accomplish the same task. And I think that's one reason of why we need to start talking about it more
Hmm.
with, in every age demographic, right? Because good ideas can come from everywhere. And really, the way that you can use AI is as vast as the imagination, right? And so, getting everyone to the table, sharing of how they're using AI, what they're learning is so important at these early phases of adoption, right? To really understand what are the best practices and then to make them repeatable as
Right.
well, too. And I think that's the really challenging thing with these AI tools is finding what is a killer use case that you can use with, for example, Microsoft Copilot, but then how do you make that repeatable throughout your employee base and how do you make it drive value to the business? And that is, the thing that, we're working on as an organization, right?
Sure.
As we're, encouraging AI literacy is, how do you identify value and how do you make it repeatable? But that all starts with, making people feel comfortable and sharing how they're using it and celebrating it and sharing best practices.
Do you, if an employee is using like an AI tool on their own, and they're not admitting it, and I'm talking about you as a leader, as a manager, you know what I mean? And again, this advice that you have for business owners as well, who are managers.
Right.
Do you care? I mean, do you care? Like in other words, the employee's getting their work done and they're
Yeah.
super productive and they're doing their stuff and they've
Yeah.
got their secret superpower AI tool that they're using and they're whatever. When you go home for the day, are you thinking to yourself, oh, I need to know about that? Or are you like, hey man, this person's like, they're crushing it, they're getting their work done. I don't care how they're getting it done. That's good for me. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so honestly, it's not that I don't care, but actually I've changed my expectation that they're going to do it and they're going to use it. And it's
Good.
just an expectation, right? And as long as they're not giving out customer information or putting proprietary competitive information out there, completely fine.
Right. But what about like if somebody's using a tool, you've got one team member that's using a tool and they're doing really, really well.
Hmm.
And you're like, like that's kind of selfish because like the rest of our team could benefit from also using that tool. How would you handle that, situation or what advice would you have for handling that? Would you, again, I'll throw it back out to you. Would it be like, hey, thanks for telling me about that tool. You're now in charge of training everybody else on how to use it. It's like, what would you
Yeah,
do?
and it's been a little bit of that, right? Because, what I've done with my team is create a culture of sharing,
Good.
right? And celebrating best practice and celebrating the people that bring that forward and asking them to share, right? Because if they share a best practice, someone's going to share one with them as well too, and it makes us all better as a team, as an organization, as a company.
All right, that's great. Um, Talk to me a little bit about fear among your employees. I mean,
Mhm.
do you get a sense of fear that AI is going to replace them? Do they talk about this stuff? I mean, you read about it every day. What are you
Yeah.
seeing among your people?
Yeah, and I know this is, something that many articles and many
Yeah,
things have been written
of
about.
course.
And, it seems like the party line these days is that, oh, AI is not going to replace your job. AI is, people are going to replace that don't use AI,
Right,
right? And
right.
that's truly the case, right? And, I've gotten my team to embrace AI for that very reason, right? Is if you want to be a best in class marketer, you need to be able to use AI, end of story. Right. And again, making that an expectation of the role is you need to know how to use it and how to apply it to your role. It becomes an expectation. Right. And then so that number one, I think is the first hurdle is, having that understanding is it's an and having an expectation that they should be using it and they need to be AI literate. So that's the first thing.
Right.
And then also too, it's really interesting because, this whole notion of, and I really, like this article is this notion of it's not having a human in the loop with
Mm.
AI, but it's having a human at the helm,
Yeah.
right? It's really the human is driving the strategy, driving how AI is used. And what I find is, what makes people the most nervous is not necessarily that AI is going to replace them, but it's changing the way that they do work. And
Mm.
that's unsettling. And it's also changing the definition of their role, which is also a little unsettling as well, too, right? So it's changing how work gets done and it's changing what the actual marketing roles are, right?
Got it.
Yeah. And I think that's more unsettling than that, oh my God, I'm going to be completely replaced by AI. I think we've, gotten past that hurdle. Is more of the change management of, hey, how you work's going to be different and your role's going to be a little bit different, and that's okay.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you guys use Office 365 or Google? Like,
We do.
you're a
We do.
Microsoft, you guys are a Microsoft
Yes. And
shop.
we have Copilot.
Okay. I mean, are you like every one of my clients and every company that I talk to where they're like, we are literally using like 20% of what this thing like really does, you know? Like you feel like you're really underusing it. Do you think you're guilty of that? And if you are, I mean, because a lot of it is all the co-pilot stuff. Whenever I show this, to clients, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't even know like we own this. We can do it."
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
see it? Do you recommend more training? Have you tried more training? What has been your experience of trying to get more people in your team to,
Yeah.
to adapt to this stuff?
So I'll tell you what we're doing in our team, which is kind of funny, is so we actually have a weekly contest going of,
Cool.
who actually is using Copilot, how much they're using it and what they're doing with it, right?
Right.
And again, it goes back to creating that excitement. We're a little competitive, so we have a competition and then making it fun, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about getting more training. It's actually getting in there and using it, right? So encouraging the use is thing one, celebrating the use. And then again, as I said, it keeps saying sharing best practices and making them repeatable. And so I actually feel we're getting quite a lot of Copilot because of how we've implemented it in our organization.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, are you using outsiders to help you, or are you pretty much doing this all internally?
So we have the benefit of an AI COE to
Ah,
help guide us, and you're going to be talking to the head of that in just a minute. But we
yeah.
have a great resource internally, and I know that not every company has
Okay. Yeah,
that.
that sounds great. That sounds great. Do you think that do you have security concerns about AI at all? I mean, do you think that this is are you just relying on your internal team to like be dealing with that, or do you have additional concerns that you've got to be addressing yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, any company cannot just rely on number one, the built-in security in their tools or, an organization. Again, it comes back to educating the individual employees as well
Right.
too, because you have to have that no matter what, and especially with AI because it's so amorphous and there's many different ways that you can use it. People have to understand what are the risks and what are the guardrails, and that's so important. You can't just rely blindly on an organization or a piece of software that says, oh, it's secure. You can't depend on that. You have to have knowledge and you have to be enabled.
Great. All right, a couple more questions and I'll let you go. First of
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
are you what are you using in your personal life, AI? Do you use like ChatGPT or Copilot yourself? And I'm just
Yeah.
kind of curious like what you use it for.
Yeah, no, I use both, and I use everything from research to planning to finding things I can't find.
Yeah,
I use it on a daily basis in many ways. And I find that, I get a lot of benefit out of it. Number one, just for making, a lot of research or mundane tasks much faster, as well too as, and that frees up me to focus on more strategic things as
right.
well too, right? Instead of planning out my day soup to nuts, I can actually have it or summarizing things or spending gobs of time on emails. I can spend time doing other things.
That's great. So I use it for two things. I use it, first of all, for TV shows. Like if I like a
Yeah,
good TV show, I have a whole
yeah,
thread in ChatGPT saying, I
yeah.
really like to, Landman, suggest 10 other
Mhm.
shows that are like it. And then that's also fun.
Mhm.
And then I'm going through like a fitness thing, trying to hit like a certain calories per day and exercise or whatever. And it
Mhm.
like coaches you along the way. It's fantastic. It's like a
Yeah,
friend and, it's like, it just becomes like a daily, like kind of companion. Do you, when you talk about the younger generations in particular,
Mhm. Yeah,
not wanting to be heard so much, this is from your
yeah,
survey. I mean, they want to be heard, excuse me, and not
yeah,
enough of them are being heard.
yeah.
Um, why do you think that is? Do you think that's the age old, they're young kids, shut up, we know better because we're older and know more? Do you think it's, remote working that there's not enough FaceTime? Are they hiding behind AI chatbots instead of, doing more interpersonal kind of work? Kind of curious, like I mean, you've been in the workplace, like you said, for more than 20 years. So why do you think younger generations feel like they're not being heard enough, or they want to have more of a say in
Yeah.
what's going on? And how are you fixing that?
Yeah, so I think from their perspective, I mentioned that earlier, is, they probably feel like they've earned the right to have a seat at the table because they are native to a lot of this technology, right?
Right.
Number one. And so they feel like they should have a stronger voice, which they should have, right? But then also the onus comes on for folks like us who've been in the workplace a little bit longer, right? Is it's not necessarily about involving them in the actual decision of the technology. Am I going to go with SAP, or am I going to go with Oracle, or am I going to go with Salesforce? It's not about that. It is about getting their feedback and understanding what are your challenges, what are your issues, what do you need help with, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve, and getting their feedback in that respect. And then when you make the technology decision, going back and saying, this is why I made the decision, because I heard this from you, and this decision will help support these areas where you said you need help. It will help support and catalyze these opportunities that we've talked about. And so it's more of the onus that's on us to communicate the why,
Got it.
and show how we've taken that feedback into account. It's not necessarily the actual decision, but it's the process of making the decision and providing transparency on that.
Great. All right, great answer. Final question. So you said you before coming to Cox, you were like 23 years or so, like in
Yeah,
various
yeah.
different jobs. Sorry, I don't want to.
Hmm.
You're not
Yeah.
old, okay? You're not old. But you've been in like in the industry for a while. And if you go back, we're recording this at the end of 2025. So think about that. I mean, that takes you back to like 2002, which is like
Hmm.
the Stone Age, when you compare it to where technology is now. You've seen so much over the
Yeah.
past 23 years, and so, where do you think it's going? Like, you say, and I hope you're with Cox for the next 23 years, but let's just
Mhm.
push yourself ahead another 5 years or so, and you're in this role as a
Yeah.
CMO. I mean, like a marketing leader.
Yeah.
How do you think AI is going to change your job? How's it going to change your team? What's it going to do for marketing people?
Yeah, I mean, and it's so exciting because again, AI is the
It
most
is.
transformative thing that we're ever going to experience in our lifetime. It's going to change how work gets done. It needs to change what we value, as well too. And it's going to be really interesting. I don't even think we know how it all is all going to play out just yet, right? I think it's going to play out honestly in unexpected ways, right? Because if
Okay.
you think about, hey, if there's this democratization of knowledge, what does that mean from an educational standpoint? What does it mean from a hiring standpoint, right? That anyone could become an expert on anything, right? So then what are the skills that you're looking for, right? As a manager, as a business owner, right? They're going to be different, right? Because
Yeah.
anyone can get knowledge, anyone can, get skilled on certain things. And what we look for is going to have to be different. And the skills that we build in our workforce and the skills that we look for are going to be so different, right? So for example, I think, what's going to be very important coming up is organizational skills, right? And not necessarily, and that's one thing that I think I bring to the table when we're talking about implementing AI is I have deep organizational
Good.
knowledge, right, and how
Yeah.
things work. I think also huge is having the connection and communication skills. Human to human is also going to be very important as well too. And those things, right now we're not focused on because everyone's trying to get knowledge and education, but I think that's going to change. It's going to be really interesting to see how that affects the workplace, how we hire, and how we skill our employees.
It's great. Sarah, you're awesome. Thank you very much. That was really a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And by the way, this piece, and just when we publish this video, it's just all about your thoughts on AI and on AI from an experienced marketing leader. I mean, I think that's important. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Cox, the data from the survey and the difference in the generations. But leaders today, business owners are dealing with these issues because we have
Yeah.
these younger generations in the workplace. So it's all part of that. So I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for spending the time with me.